AEW, the wrestling promotion that came together simply because people were tired of WWE's horrible booking. The promotion that gave us moments like this, and this. But over time, although a dream match and 5-star match factory, the company has slightly had a fall from grace, whether it's TV ratings, attendance, or fan perception in general. AEW isn't the same as it was just a few years ago, which is pretty concerning considering how great WWE are doing right now. AEW in their first 2 years were kind of a mixed bag. In early 2019, when they first started, they had people like Moxley, Cody, Jericho, The Elite, and a few more other recognizable names. But some of the booking and the mere fact there weren't any fans due to COVID just made the product unwatchable. Wrestling in general was unwatchable to me during this time, if I'm being honest, as it felt so soulless and bland. Before COVID, AEW were actually doing their thing. I'll admit I wasn't watching vividly like I am now, but due to rewatching older episodes, I've pretty much been caught up. In the early days, you had Jericho vs. Cody, which like a lot of earlier AEW feuds were very, very segment heavy. Like they literally had a conference at the top of the ramp one episode, then brawled throughout the arena with DDP the next. Which kind of goes to show how much and what AEW were willing to experiment with. DDP even came back to the ring too in early AEW, something I swear never gets talked about. The main storylines AEW would do before COVID hit were Jericho vs. Moxley for the world title and yet another very segment heavy feud, MJF vs. Cody, and Young Bucks vs. Adam Page and Kenny Omega, which are pretty much all considered some of AEW's best feuds to date. Like yeah, Cody getting lashed one episode, Moxley smashing Jericho with a glass bottle one, then banger tag matches the next. Like the range and amount of long-term storylines that were evolving were so good to see, on top of the already amazing in-ring product AEW were offering. 2020, although like I personally said I wasn't a big fan of due to COVID, is still a high and sweet spot for AEW fans. It saw the rise of Brody Lee, who beat Cody Rhodes for the TNT title in some amazing matches and feuds, OC vs. Jericho in a low-key, hilarious rivalry, and the debut of a lot of talent including FTR, Matt Hardy, Ricky Starks, Eddie Kingston, Miro, and Sting, which shocked literally the whole wrestling industry. Like Sting in a wrestling promotion not named WWE in the year 2020? Like it legit felt like a fever dream or like something out of universe mode. And that's why people fell in love with AEW, the randomness on top of the amazing wrestling. 2020 would start off with Moxley beating Jericho for the world title at Revolution, and Moxley's reign saw him defend the title pretty often on TV and defeated names like Eddie Kingston and MJF on pay-per-view, until losing the title to Kenny Omega to close up the year. And can we just take a second to acknowledge the crazy stacked names who first held this title? Jericho, then Mox, then Omega. AEW were really in their bag. We now have 2021 AEW. The year AEW undoubtedly hit their peak. The year most wrestling fans gave AEW a shot. The year started off with no fans as the COVID days weren't over just yet, but that really didn't matter as much as for most, as AEW storylines were worth tuning in. After winning the AEW title from Mox, Kenny would make his way to Impact, which kickstarted his belt collector gimmick, which was peak. Dude had the AAA title, TNA title, and the AEW title. I mean, just look at this entrance. Kenny had the title basically for all of 2021, having incredible matches with Danielson, Jungle Boy, Pac, Sami Callihan, Christian, Ray Phoenix, Moxley. Bro, I can go on. This man was on another level, and to think he was basically taped up and not fully healthy while doing it too is even crazier. In 2021, AEW also decided to double down on bringing in new talent because, like 2020, TK decided to test what free agency could bring him and brought in people like Christian, Andrade, Malachi Black, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, and AEW's biggest signing ever, CM Punk. Man, the hype levels of Punk potentially signing with AEW were crazy. I still remember watching that Rampage episode where Darby called himself the best in the world, which had me marking out, I can't cap. After Punk debuted in August, then Cole and Bryan debuted the next month of September, AEW were basically made men. They had an incredible all-time roster, great booking, segment-heavy feuds, returns and debuts that somehow didn't get leaked, and they were everything a wrestling fan needed at that time. After Cole and Bryan debuted, the Elite would transform into the Super Elite, giving them pretty much control of AEW. They were legit out there wilding. After the Super League came together, Kenny and the Bucks would reignite their flame with Hangman, which, although I know is a big part of AEW's lore, it just doesn't hit with me, as I wasn't watching, let alone I didn't know who these guys were before AEW. That match at Revolution 2020 though, still heat. After the Elite lore, Kenny would lose the title to Hangman Page at Full Gear to finish the year, and to some, this is the beginning of the end of AEW's prime. The year started off with Hangman Adam Page taking on Bryan Danielson in their rematch for the AEW title, and oh my god. These boys went out and hooped, and hooped, and hooped, which is pretty much what Hangman did his whole title reign. He had bangers with Danielson, Lance Archer, and Adam Cole, until losing his title to none other than CM Punk. And some people like to blame or make fun of TK for this move, but I don't see it, man. The hype Punk and AEW had after Punk joined AEW was genuinely peak. So Punk winning the title couldn't have been or wasn't a bad idea, no matter who's saying it. But fortunately though, we all know the story, and after winning the title, Punk would get injured on the next Dynamite. AEW would then go into scramble mode, and instead of Punk vs Tanahashi happening at Forbidden Door, it was Moxley vs Tanahashi instead. And the match went on as planned. It wasn't a banger or nothing, but Mox won and had a few rivalries of his own, including one with Chris Jericho. And the two Loki had a banger that's pretty underrated at Quake at the Lake, which also saw CM Punk return once again. And to make a very long story short, after Punk returned, he would get squashed by Moxley on Dynamite, then beat Moxley for the title at All Out 2 weeks later, just to drum roll, get injured again. And after that, he would go on a tirade at a press conference and then get into a fight with the Elite, which led to suspensions for everyone involved. Don't get it twisted. While all of this was going down, AEW were still great in many aspects. They had Cody getting absolutely clowned by fans, a better than ever tag division, the reveal that Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor, more Bryan Danielson, more Sting, Christian transforming and becoming a monster heel, the rise of MJF, and a lot more. It's just the amount of off-screen drama just gave fans way too much to talk about, and is ultimately why AEW have the stigma they do now. Before Brawlout, you didn't really hear bad stories of AEW or negative headlines. Nowadays, that's all you see. You got legit 50 and 60-year-old jobbers making a living off talking bad about AEW. It's kind of hilarious. After Punk got injured again, Mox would once again win the AEW title at Grand Slam against Bryan Danielson, until losing the title to MJF at Full Gear in Jersey, which I was in attendance for. Shout out Regal. 2023 gave fans the most sports entertainment year probably in the company's existence. The year was based around MJF as world champion, but not the scumbag MJF that was there from the start. This was an MJF that was a babyface and someone who had a best friend, who happened to be Adam Cole. The two would form thanks to a tournament, and Better Than You Baby became over. Unfortunately though, Cole got injured, which ruined and derailed this whole storyline. And like 2022, 2023 AEW still showed flashes of prime AEW, whether it was banger matches or crazy debuts like Adam Copeland. AEW were still doing it. And the same thing applies to 2024 AEW as well. We saw the rise of Swerve Strickland, signings like Okada, and banger matches. Shout out Danielson. Dude's last year was picture perfect. And if you ask me, AEW's problem really just boils down to perception. That's really it. Just a perception issue. When you have the biggest company of all time in WWE doing best business in legit over 20 years, and then you have the second company that only started up because WWE weren't doing good, I mean, you're bound to have perception issues. It's just you gotta work through it and find what works and ditch what doesn't. That's literally it.